Hello! I've been wanting to make a video for a long time now about my ways of creating sewing portfolios and journals, and this is one way I use from time to time to stay inspired. I like to share it with you so that you never run out of ideas about what to sew next. I made a booklet from several scrap pieces of white and black cardstock. I used a decorative silver thread to bind the pages, and I also added an elastic thread to prevent it from opening. You can find something similar in stationery shops or use a plain notebook. I also decided to add a small envelope in the back, and I definitely recommend doing it. It's the perfect size for storing figure drawings. I use them as templates when I want to draw a garment that I like to make in the future, and you can also keep a lot of other things inside, such as fabric swatches or other templates. Here you can also see a small drawing on the last page, and I use these pages as a place to sketch ideas. I started this journal a year ago, and now I see that I like to change a lot of things. For example, on this tunic, the gathered panel on the front is too low and it should be just above or below the natural waistline. I also hate round necklines, so I went for a V neckline instead. And the way I drew those sleeves isn't exactly perfect. I now see that the shoulder seams would be too long. And I do want slightly puffy sleeves, but not as puffy as on the original sketch. As for the next one, you might have noticed that I like to describe it below the croquis. It's a V-neck dress with a gathered waistband. The skirt is extremely simple, but the top has a special touch. Instead of bias binding, I would use a piece of contrasting fabric, or if I'm using a plain one, I'd go with a pattern for these two strips. I like the idea of gap sleeves with this, but I always improvise on the go, so who knows how these garments will turn out once I'm finished sewing. Moving on to the next one is a skirt this time. I saw a photo of it on Pinterest, but because I didn't have access to a printer at that moment, I decided to draw it instead. It's perfect for summer. The skirt is gathered on the top, the waistband has a tie on the front and perhaps a satin bow, and the hem is covered with a piece of floral lace. I think a blue fabric and white lace would be a great combination. The next piece is a very complicated one, once again inspired by a photo seen on Pinterest. It has a thin belt, it's a lace shirt with a collar, fitted sleeves and cuffs. I definitely go with fabric covered buttons, and I do everything in one color, the top, the shirt and the full circle skirt. This would be perfect to wear to work, but the next piece is more suitable for evenings. The back is longer than the front, sometimes this is called a mallet dress. I added a thin belt with a simple bow without tails to keep it more elegant, and the sweetheart neckline goes very well with it. It could be a strapless dress, but I'd add a piece of see-through fabric or lace with a rounded neckline for those who don't like to show so much skin, or they just have problems wearing this type of neckline. Another idea for that top part above the neckline would be to use a skin-colored mesh and some embroidery or beading. For those who are like me and drawing isn't one of their best skills, it's a great idea to search for photos online and print them. I use standard printer paper, and after downloading the photos, I remove the background to make sure that the piece of clothing is in focus. And by doing that, I also save a lot of ink. Sometimes I leave it if it's a white garment, otherwise it would blend in with my paper in the journal. You don't have to search for photos of garments that you like as they are. I like just the color or fabric choice or one part of the garment, the hem, the front, the back, the neckline, the way the skirt is sewn. Everything comes into consideration. Another way to get photos is by browsing through newspapers, magazines or sewing pattern catalogs. You can always use a copy machine and use only the copy instead of removing pages from the actual magazines. I like everything about this piece, but it's too big for my taste. I like it to be well fitted or maybe add a belt, and I absolutely hate the color on the last model, but I do like the pattern. It's simple and perfect to wear to work. Once again, I'd shorten the sleeves and change the neckline. It's too close to the neck. You can leave those photos in a folder, but I think it's much better idea to actually put them into a notebook or a journal. I call it a journal because I add the date on the top of the page. It's interesting to keep track of things you like over the year. It's neat, and you can add notes or fabric swatches, mark what pieces you have sewn or at least tried to make. You can definitely use a scalpel or scissors to cut out the photos. I like to just tear off the excess paper. And these photos from Burda have some markings on the top. I decided to leave them because I guess they are pattern numbers, so if I ever decide to use it, I can easily find the pattern. Using a glue stick is the easiest and the fastest option to glue these down. Double-sided tape works as well, and it's useful to add any information about where you got the photos from, and I also like to leave some space below them to be able to write down what I'd like or don't like. If you don't have time for this, you can just cut out the photos and put them in the envelope, set it aside for later. For example, this comes in handy when traveling. I found some interesting things in the newspaper when I was on vacation. I tore them out, and as I didn't have any glue on hand, I just put them inside the envelope and worked with them when I got home. I hope these ideas helped you get a clearer picture of what you could do to keep inspired. You can make something like this with photos of your own clothes that you made. I actually have a separate playlist of videos showing you exactly how to do that. Let me know in the comments which is your favorite way to find inspiration, and don't hesitate to ask questions. Until next time, happy sewing!